So, there's this thing called Horizons we have to talk about. Does anybody know anything about it? Well, it's been a fan favorite for many years. It's no longer here, much like everything else we're talking about today. But I know it's got a place in everybody's heart that's here, and everybody loves it. So please welcome to the stage Mr. Hal Bowers, as well as Trevor Bryant.
Todd, thank you.
Welcome.
I've always wanted to sit between two ferns.
I think we look pretty good up here. Between the ferns.
So I know this is, a lot of people love Horizons. Not everybody actually got to ride it. So show of hands who actually did get to ride it.
How? I don't know if is your mic up?
Oh, that's actually
That's good. Yeah,
That's a pretty good number. That's great.
Well, they'll check you out. All right, so we'll get started. So Trevor, you sent us a lot of great things, and tonight you're going to see some model photos that nobody's ever seen that came from Trevor's personal collection. Really, really cool stuff here. But you have your Imagine News here, and why don't you tell everybody how this got started and you were involved in this?
Sure. So Horizons was my very first project for Disney. I got hired in 1980. By the way, I got paid $100 more than Richard Vaughn. But we just figured that out yesterday. It was, I came in as an architectural model builder, and the building itself was what I was asked to work on and do. I got that done in pretty short order and was doing a lot of other functions in the model shop, a lot of different opportunities, whatever came up. And one day, a gentleman named Claude Coates came in, and he had been watching me work, and we had talked a few times, and he asked me if I wanted to help him with some sculpture. And I was an architectural model builder. That had been my background before coming to Disney. And I said, well, I've never really sculpted anything, but boy, I'd like to give it a try. And he called me back to his office, and he showed me a little drawing he had of a submarine. And he said, I'd really like you to sculpt this little submarine. And I took it on as my first show design opportunity. So that was a big transition for me from the architectural model building side and doing a lot of the work that was done on the 1/8" model, working my way into the show model. And Claude was a great mentor for me, as were so many other different people at Disney at that time. The picture on the right is actually later. The picture in the top right corner is me with Gil Kepler, George McGinnis, John Hench, and Torre Atencio. That picture was when we were reviewing the urban habitat in production. So I had been hired, I think it was within a month or two, I was working with Claude on some of the show design models. And then in about 6 months, I was now responsible for the actual fabrication of the sets over to Hunga. And then it moved on from the sets to field installation for Horizons project.
And that's kind of the story we're going to tell tonight, too. That story is you the modeling, becoming the sets, getting the installation. So we'll kick it off with the
hopefully tell you some interesting stories.
Yeah. Good old man of the South, grand old man of the South.
Yeah, this is the Jules Verne scene. Colin Campbell was responsible for a lot of the design of this scene. And I should mention George McGinnis, the late George McGinnis, was responsible for the overall show design. Just a wonderful gentleman of a man, and it's a great opportunity to work with him. The Jules Verne scene was Colin did the initial design. I did the model for that, which is seen in this picture. And those sketches on the right, also Colin Campbell did those as well. Colin was really then the second big show designer guy that came over from the studio, one of the original animators that I had the opportunity to work with. All of this, you got to understand, this was just within a few months of my employment, so pretty remarkable time.
So somebody out in the audience, Dreamfinder guy, he wrote to GE a while back and got a lot. Thank you. Yeah, appreciate this. So this next one, I believe, came from GE wrote to him and sent him all this wonderful information. So a couple of the slides tonight, and there's your model again, and then in another shot.
Right, and that's the Rabita scene. I don't know. Can you? No, you
don't
see it.
That's the next one.
Rabita scene's the next one. But that's the Jules Verne scene. That's mocked up in a. That's again a model shot. That's mocked up in the sphere, and the journey to the moon kind of concept. There's also, it's interesting because that scene is Jules and the dog and all of that, and then that scene is really repeated in the future port scene when the spaceship is docking in outer space. So
I never made that connection, but yeah, 100%.
How you know a little the history of Robitas too? We talked about this on one of our episodes.
We did. So this was a French illustrator, an amazing futurist who would do these fantastic cityscapes. And I think what was really neat about this is you guys took these flat drawings and actually brought it to life with, movement and animation and.
Yeah, it was a lot of time with an X-Acto knife. And Colin was right there with me, spending time cutting each one of those little things out and mocking them up. And these were all 1-inch scales. Colin was a great guy to work with. So, yeah.
Easy living.
Easy living, yeah. This moves on into the Art Deco scene. This was, George McGinnis really kind of focused on this as something I think he really enjoyed doing, creating this kind of look back at the future. So the idea of the barber shop, the little hair cutting scene, it's kind of the future technology. It's also a nod back to Carousel of Progress since GE was the sponsor, so there was kind of a relationship there as well.
Yeah, and this was the scene where they actually used "It's a Great Big Beautiful Tomorrow"
yes.
as fully on in there. Although George Wilkins told us that he actually interwove that music theme a little bit throughout Horizons here and there where he could.
So Neon City was interesting. Neon City was. I think it had more to do with budget than anything else. I think at this point we were running out of money, and at least strategically about how we were going to spend that money. So this was a way of creating a kind of scene that reflected a look back at tomorrow again, in a way that could be affordable. So these were all pipes. Bent pipes, and using black light on that scene, and kind of this whimsical, futuristic vision of the future. It was a lot of fun to build.
So the next couple slides, I think we have different iterations of some of the models that you did.
Right.
Starting here with the
home. Urban habitat.
Early version of the model.
Yes, this was the scene that, I remembered we did a lot of work, now I'm just blanking out on his name. Sid Mead, thank you. Sid did a lot of the kind of preliminary renderings for this. Gil Kepler, I think, did all the final background painting for that. It was kind of this scene that really launched the story of the family. So at this point, you're meeting the family for the first time. You're meeting the daughter who's on that kind of 3D screen in the background there. And the dad is playing a theremin, which was kind of a magical musical instrument. The dog is howling along with him. And it was kind of to create this whimsical view of the future city and what the future city might be. And we had a lot of fun with designing that scene and making all those parts in model form. And then that is the urban habitat. That's the kind of backyard of that future city. and with the plants growing, and then there was a lot of references to hydroponic gardening, which came up later in the desert scene as well. There were a lot of consultants with hydroponics and how this would actually play out and work in the future. It was a lot of fun to design and build this scene, and that's a lit view of the model, I believe.
And this is a later one that was closer to the
final version. Yeah, it doesn't have the plants on the stands there yet, though.
I love this next set coming up because this is just something we never saw before with the dome and everything and some of the early models that you had here.
Right, so this was the first version of the desert scene. George McGinnis was really actively involved in this. This was his planning and his design. And the idea here was that was an operator that was operating those baskets that were going out and collecting fruit out in the fields, and it was done in forced perspective. It was a really challenging scene to build. In the full-size set, I actually have a funny story I have to tell here. There was, when I came to Florida as the production designer for this show, I got a call at 5 o'clock in the morning, and I was told that the cement trucks were there to shoot the gunite on the desert scene. And I said, that's great. You better make sure that George is there. Well, George is not there. He's traveling somewhere. I said, okay, well, what about John Olson? John Olson needs to be there. He was our kind of rocker. No one was there, absolutely no one. And they were there with 3 cement trucks with hoses. And when I arrived on the set at I think it was like 5 o'clock in the morning, these guys are standing there and saying, where do I shoot this stuff? And I had never done anything like that in my life. And I called Maggie Elliott, who's my boss at the time, and I said, you have to get someone out here that knows what the hell they're doing. I don't know. And she said, you're the only one. You do it. I think I did okay. That is a hovercraft that wonderful guy named Ed Gomez wound up doing the final model work on that. That's an early model that was done. He came in and did all the final model of that. The idea was that it was a hovercraft that could fly around the desert. The family scene in the kitchen, again, that was one of the first models that we really got through pretty quickly in the design phase and talking about what that needed to be with the animatronics. And this really introduced this whole family. Now they're connecting from the urban habitat to the desert scene and really making all these wonderful connections.
I always loved on this one how the water was even a connection point where you come through and then there's the waterfall and then the waterfall travels underneath the house.
That's right.
And it's and which then connects to the later scenes with the sea. And there's all these very subtle ways of transitioning and elements from one section that show up in another one as, as introducing the concept, and then it plays out later on.
Yeah, a lot of that goes back to Claude Coates, who is the original designer for the show. And Claude kind of laid out a lot of this, which then ran into some budget issues later with costs, and George McGinnis really came in and kind of made it work. That's the family sitting there talking, the girl talking to the sub-boy, who's Tom Fitzgerald. I don't know if you know Tom Fitzgerald. He's a writer and now show producer for Disney, and wonderful guy to work with. Tom and I had a great time on that show. That's sub-boy, who actually Tom modeled for that character in the show.
And was that the sub that you did your first
Yes, that's the sub. That was my very first model that I did, working for Claude. Yeah. That's the family sitting there in the classroom, which was actually George McGinnis's family. Those were his kids, and I think the teacher was someone that used from a previous show, but the kids were, George's kids came in and modeled for those. Just kind of a nice family story. This scene was, Harper Goff was very actively involved in this scene. So Harper came in when we were doing the model. That was one of the first times I had the opportunity to work with him. And Harper laid out this whole mining scene and this whole concept of magnesium mining nodules. And working with a wonderful guy named Tom Sherman, who Tony knows so well. Great memories of Tom.
You're doing a little work here. And
yes.
Hal had a question for you. I remember we don't know if we have the answer yet, right? Hal,
We do.
We do have it. Okay.
I don't have it with me, but I did finally find a picture of the Disneyland inside there.
Of the Disneyland inside that model?
Yes.
You know more than I do. Dave Jones was the guy that filmed that and built all those models. I came in and helped him do the final construction of this. So this was a sphere, and it had a camera mounted in the center of the sphere, and that allowed the sphere to rotate around the camera. So you got this full effect of outer space as the sphere rotated around it. And I was lucky enough to be able to add some model work to that.
So if you're
my first film model.
If you're trying to remember where this was as you're transitioning into space, it was actually coming over you as if you were going in the center of the space station.
That's exactly.
And what I think is really amazing here is this shows you, just this one photo, how much detail was put into that model. You may have only ever seen this much of that model. And that, as Trevor said, they put the camera in there, they filmed it, and then the model's destroyed and they project the image. But today it would just be CG, right? But this is the amount of detail, and obviously when we talk about the endings, the amount of detail that went into the endings is it was the size of this room, practically.
Well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're in space now.
Yes.
This is an early one, too.
This is an early model of the space kind of exercise area. It was just after you went past the little ship that was loading, and I think some of those figures got deleted in budgeting. I think the one rowing the boat, I believe it was an empty boat.
Yeah,
it was empty, yeah. And the body scan.
Yeah,
The
even
body
like
scan.
the person actually getting scanned, because I saw the body scan, I'm like, what's the body scan for? I'm like,
Right.
oh, well, there was supposed to be a body there.
Right. There were some budget cuts.
Yeah. And I always loved the basketball, the projection of just the silhouettes of the basketball team, the 0G basketball team. That was so cool and so subtle, but like really neat.
And there on your left there is the projection that we were just talking about, the rotation of the
That's
spaceship.
right.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. That's a much younger me working. What was that?
You were the Kylo Ren.
Kylo Ren of
Red.
Horizons. He's working in space. You see the connection?
Just so you know, if you go to Disneyland, the restaurant there, I think it's does anyone know Club 33? Is that what it is? No. There's a restaurant there, and there's a scene where Walt walks by on the upper levels if you're sitting down and eating. That is me. That is not Walt. So, but that's me working on the model. So yeah, that was a big deal. And there's me again working on the model.
And I think when you were on the ride, the things that the model really show is the incredible scale of these sets, which I almost didn't really appreciate how huge these things really were. But when you see this and you realize, oh,
That's 1-inch scale.
yeah, they were enormous.
Yeah.
And this harkens back to the original, Walt on those television specials would show those models that they could walk through at eye level, and still doing it many years later.
So I was a very young guy in this picture, and it was the opportunity of a lifetime to be able to do that.
So it's taken some changes here. The space is getting ready.
So that is the spaceport. You can see that's the little spaceship there on the left. That was modeled after the submarine. So that model, I think Eddie Gomez built that one, and he also did the little air hovercraft. And then the scene you can see, that there's big changes there. There were budget cuts, basically.
And this is a zoomed out view without the little spaceship. Now
Just like look at it now, you can really appreciate how that all flows together.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And there you can see. Right. That's so. As you're riding by the vehicle, you'd never experience what you see here. This is you'd be much closer to those scenes and seeing that as you go through. And that's the outer space assembly scene. That's the model on the left.
Yeah, there it is there.
Yeah.
Just like that.
So this scene was the spaceport docking. Are we going to see that scene again?
Oh yeah, we're going to see that scene again.
Okay, because I got a little surprise.
Yeah,
for
okay,
you.
we got to see that.
So that's the spaceport docking scene. That's the model, and then the down to the right, which I think you'll see in the next slide, is the crystal lab. There's actually a great story here. So when we built this model, that one arm that's holding the crystal in the center of the room, it kept falling off. And we had to ship it over to the Tahunga facility to have it used for the set construction. And I took a toothpick and I propped up the arm with a toothpick just for shipping so that it would go there. And when it came time to buy off the final scene at Tahunga, I went over there and I'm looking at the set and they have built the toothpick. And I just remember being like, what? It was a great moment. It was a joke. They didn't intend for it to be there. And then this is great. This is building sets at Tahunga.
Building the sets, yeah, there they are.
Yeah. So this is the set construction of the sub room, where the sub boy is going to be working on the sub, and then the sub just below that.
I think the
final set construction.
And the next slide gives you really an idea of the scale of what we're dealing with here. I mean, these aren't small pieces.
Yeah, these were all suspended at Tahunga. They were built and then lit, and basically the show was bought off at the Tahunga facility. So it was really remarkable to see them go in. That's that scene again. Those are George McGinnis's children in that scene.
They have hair in real life.
They have hair in real life.
Well, we saw Buzzy get dressed yesterday. We're going to see them get some hair. So.
This is the spaceport scene. So this is where the arrival is, and this was the mock-up at Tahunga. This was a really revealing moment for me as a designer. I remember walking into Tahunga and they had all of these scenes set up, and I thought I was in a modern art gallery, because when they're not assembled in the show and you just see them displayed on their own and they're lit up, it's pretty profound for a designer. So. Okay, so.
Oh, I got the slides later for that. You're going to the story?
Do you want me to go to the story?
Oh, I have slides for the story.
In here or later?
A little later.
A little later.
All right, we'll wait a
We're
little
building
bit.
up the suspense because we're talking about it. Yeah,
But you can see him reaching out for something there.
Exactly.
That's the
Mom.
ramp again going up.
This next one is great.
Oh, that's Ned Landon. Ned Landon from General Electric. He was the writer for all of GE's publicity, worked really closely with him, wonderful man. Had a very funny way of talking, but he was just a great guy and great to work with. And that's the test track for Horizons. That was built behind the Tahunga facility in North Hollywood.
So we're going to dive into a little of the construction, and then we're going to get into some personal stories that Trevor has. So there's some great photos here of construction. These came from some of the GE archives, and I think when you look at some of these photos, you're going to realize how massive this building was. I mean, how we've talked about it. The Omnisphere area was, I think there's a picture coming up here in a second.
The building was designed by George Rester, and it was it actually was the very first model I built for Disney was that building for the 1/8" scale overall model. I was initially hired as a model builder.
Look at this. It's a chasm.
That's the interior under construction. I remember walking that site many times and watching that scaffolding go up in there. That's for the Omnimax Theater.
Yeah. We've got some load here.
Load, unload, load area, the Daxion panels, and then great lighting in that space. Those are the ride vehicles. They were unusual. Those doors slid open, as most of you seem to know. You wrote it. The ride was pretty. I don't think it was as much of a challenge as some of the later rides that I worked on. Certainly not as much of a challenge as Test Track, but it worked pretty well. That's coming into the desert scene. This was the rockwork modeling that I talked about later when we had to actually build that.
So this slide I put in here because this is the scent cat.
Oh, this.
Yeah, did you hear that? Everybody out there? Oh. So we always do things differently here. So I made a couple phone calls. And is it in here? I found the company a couple of years ago that still makes the scent. And we have it in this little satchel. Oh, there you go.
Are you
smell.
kidding?
No,
Really?
take a smell.
Oh, that's it.
So we're going to put this next to Trevor. When you go in there and have a seat, come smell Horizons again. You can, if you pass out, I'm sorry.
Right.
It's just,
If you can dream it, you can smell it.
if you agree, you can smell it. So for those that weren't aware, in the desert scene that we set up here, it was supposed to be a lorange grove, which how was a combination?
It was a long orange.
A long orange.
It's a long orange. In order to make it easier for the harvesters to pick, it was
That's right. That's
genetically
right.
grown to be taller, so that
it's
way.
orange.
You have a better memory than me. There we go. Yes, that's absolutely right. I do remember that this thing stunk the entire building.
Well, I've had it in here a half hour, and I was over there, and Brian goes, I smell oranges.
The entire building. And there was a paint that was found, and I can't remember who found it, but somebody found a paint to go on the walls in the transition tunnels that literally soaked up the scent, so it did not go into the other scenes.
I'll bathe in that tonight then. So now I think we want to get to some of your personal stories. You've got a lot of great mementos and photos in here that we wanted to share, so let you talk about these.
That's a much younger me. Talking with John Hench and Marty, and it looks like they're actually believing me. So that was talking about finishes in the urban habitat and how we were going about some of the production challenges and that. I was a young guy, great opportunity.
Well, I'm going to let you set. We're finally at that part, so I'll let you set up this and work with Trevor on it there.
So one of the great mysteries that we have run across, and there are probably many of you like me that when you see a photograph that shows up on the internet or somewhere, the first thing you do is start pinching and zooming and looking at the edges and looking at the detail and trying to look at all the stuff in the background of what's going on. Because there are all kinds of fascinating things, like there's a seating chart for the space shuttle that you ride in the back of that on that panel that's lit. And then we noticed there's this Pooh Bear hanging like as the thing. But when we rode Horizons, it wasn't a Pooh Bear.
No.
It was just a generic bear.
Yeah.
So when I talked to Trevor, I'm like, do you know anything about that? Because no one we've talked to knows any. And he's like, oh yeah, I know about that.
So when we did the scene and did the first installation, it was Winnie the Pooh, and we just thought, oh, what a great little bear. Of course that kid would have Winnie the Pooh. And then some corporate attorneys came through the ride and they said, no, 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 no. You cannot use Winnie the Pooh. That's out. Figure out what you're going to do, but that's out. So the ride was, I think it was just before opening, and we were having at least the park employees coming through. So we had to come up with a change really quickly. So we made a decision, rather than to just toss Winnie the Pooh out and find a different bear, to disguise Winnie the Pooh. And you can go to the next slide, but I actually have. Winnie became Zorro the bear, which I've had in my attic since then. He's a little worse for wear, and he had a cape at one point. And I think he had a mask over his eyes as well. But he became Zorro the bear, and we really thought we were going to get away with it. It didn't last. They came through, and they really weren't happy with Zorro the bear. So we had to change it. We got a kind of a generic bear from the parks, which was in there for the rest of the duration. But I love that guy.
You can meet Zorro the bear. And you had another little memento. I don't know if you...
Yes, I didn't bring that one with me. That's a rutabaga or a turnip from the Urban Habitat. George Head, again to be missed, sent me that when they tore down Horizons, and a great memento for me. I have that in my cabinet in my family room. So that's me. Oh boy, working on the spaceport. That's the spaceport model. So that was one of my first assignments with, that's all history after that. This is a great story. So we finished Horizons, and I actually have it here, and we had an opportunity to create a T-shirt, and I don't know if anybody has these. That's the Horizons T-shirt. I got to create the little Horizons logo on the side there, which was
No, please. This ride has touched so
that
many.
was a big honor. Yeah. And I think there's a letter there that was inviting me to speak, but this is why they didn't ask me to speak. No, actually I did. I spoke to the cast members at the end of the show, and it was my first speaking. It was to as many people are here. I never spoke to that many people in my life, but yeah, great opportunity.
And here's the team that put it all together.
Love those folks.
Yeah. Well, as you know, the story really doesn't end there. We lost Horizons a number of years ago to the wrecking ball. And here at Lake Buena Vista Historical Society, as you know, we've pieced together a lot of things. You've seen this. And we pieced together Crane and Command, as you saw last night. We've done Kitchen Cabaret, and Horizons Revisited was the first revisited series that we did. And it wouldn't have been possible to do this actually without Hal, because he had the smarts years ago to do this. So Hal, why don't you tell a little bit about what you did?
Well, I don't even know why I did this, but I loved parks and I loved Imagineering, and we found out, these rides were going to change out. And so for whatever reason, there were a small group of us that just felt compelled to go out into the parks. We had an annual pass because that was affordable back then. And we would go every weekend and shoot different things. Either one guy did lots of audio stuff. You know Mike Lee from Wide New World. He was big into audio. Dave Ensign would go out and he did some stuff you're not supposed to do in order to take great pictures of Horizons, but he did that. I did a lot of video, and I thought one day I'm like, well, you know what? I should just take a tripod, and there were these wide-angle lenses that you could put on top of your regular old camcorder, and I just set the tripod down in the ride vehicle and just shot it as it went. And as it turned out, that was very fortuitous.
Well, we get to know, I meet Hal 10 or so years ago, and, like 5 or 6 years in, it's, I've got this tape. I'm like, now you tell me? Right? But we were able to take that tape and digitally transfer it. Again, many of you have seen this before, but we just wanted to tell the story. We, just like with Crane and Command, we did deinterlacing, stabilization, noise reduction, and then because of Hal's wide-angle lens, we had to remove the whole fisheye. AI is nowadays the talk of the town. This was about 3 years ago, I think now, since we did this. So AI was just at the beginning. It was one of the first projects we used AI to do the upscaling and the color adjustment on. And then we had to take all of the original audio track and put those images back in. The neat thing was that we also were able to find, very similar to Cranium Command, a very poorly transferred version of the original 3 endings. Somebody had improperly transferred them, unfortunately, but we were able to use some software to deinterlace again, put them back in together, and then mimic kind of the portal that you looked at. So we had an event or an online presentation of this a couple of years ago. We're going to show it to you tonight, and one of the things we wanted to first start was show you what we called behind the edit, which was, because you've seen Crane and Command last night, you're going to see Horizons Revisited a little later, we're going to watch Journey to Imagination Revisited. This is all the process kind of put together of what the edit, how this happens. So also too, if you're the owner of a 3D television, we were actually able to take Hal's video and split it between the left eye and the right eye and do some calculations, and actually you can actually watch Horizons in 3D because it follows just a standard track. There's not a lot of movement in it, which came out pretty cool.
It's remarkable. It's even on YouTube. If you have YouTube and like a Oculus or any of those glasses, you can go watch, and my God, it looks like you're there watching it in 3D. It's nuts. I cannot believe that worked.
I was watching it one day when I first did it, and my son Colin says, hold on. He runs to the refrigerator, gets an orange, and he says, tell me when. And I'm like, now. And I was back. So here is behind the edit, and then we'll depart. And remember, when Horizons Revisited is going, when we start that, that will go right into the break, and then we'll come back, and if Brooke will tell me if around 4:40, I believe, is the time we're going to return. Is that correct, Brooke? I just want to make sure I'm getting the time right. Because we're going to get right back on schedule with Journey to Imagination Revisited. So, and we'll be back for that. So,
well, we should have everybody, a round of applause for Trevor,
yes,
please, before we get into this, because and long live Zorro the Bear.
That's right. So before we run Horizons Revisited, this is behind the edit, and you can kind of see where Hal's raw footage was turned into something you can enjoy.
If we can dream it, then we can do it. Yes, we can, yes, we can. If we can dream it, then we can do it. Yes, we can, yes, we can.
Have you ever looked beyond today into the future? Picturing a world we've yet to see.
We don't want to lose him.
Hey, Mom, what if he just floats away?
He won't.
Hey, Mom, what if I just float away?
And your father will get you as soon as he manages to get your shoes.
That like the squeaking.
Now there's my speed. Sports and exercise in zero gravity.
It looks like fun.
It is once you get the hang of it.
Your father will get you as soon as he manages to get your shoes.
What about floating? That's
Only in fine.
Hey, Mom, Mom!
What is it?
Well,
So we're going to play the full attraction for you now, our revisited. We did cut a little bit out from the beginning, which is all the pre-show and the walkthrough, so I think it runs 12 minutes or so. You're going to see all 3 endings, which is great. So if you, I know somebody's going to go, there's space. Don't worry, space, and they're all there. They're all there. But once again, thank you very much, Trevor, for joining us. We're back to Horizons, and we're
Well,
going to choose our own adventure moving
it
forward.
was a career starter for me. I get a little emotional because it really was a life-changing event. And I loved it. I loved working on it. And I was able to do some pretty great things after that, I think.
Give us a short list because people need to know what else you've done.
Well, if you ride Test Track, I was the creative director for Test Track. That's running right now. And I did now I got to go through the whole list. I did a lot of work. I'm blanking out on all the. Who remembers Jody? What else have I done? My wife is here. I married my wife who worked at Imagineering and just retired as creative director there as well. So we've had a lot of history at the company. The last project I did was in Tokyo.
Shanghai.
Shanghai. Sorry, Shanghai. God, I'm really blanking out now. Sorry. But yeah, I've done a lot of work. And if you go on my website, you can read about it. So that's probably the best thing.
All right, so we'll run Horizons Revisited. We'll do the break. We'll run that right into Journey into Imagination Revisited. And hopefully I got the time right at 4:40. If not, we'll make an announcement and we'll get that time adjusted for you. So enjoy Horizons Revisited.
All right.
Horizons 1 is now departing. Our final destination today, the 21st century.
Hey, that's some destination.
My wife's right. Wait till you see the new towns of tomorrow. Desert farms and floating cities, even colonies in space. But you know, this isn't exactly the first time anyone's tried to make this trip. People have been dreaming about the future for centuries. Well, here's the stuff dreams were made of several hundred years ago. Yeah, it's always fun looking back at tomorrow. Come on, I'll show you what I mean. There's the grand old man himself, Jules Verne. This is the way a moonshot looked to him back in the late 1800s. Old Uncle Jules may not have had all the answers, but he had the right idea.
He was just a little ahead of his time.
You know, people have painted some pretty fantastic views of the future.
And some pretty mixed up ones, too.
easy living. It's always been just around the corner.
Say, we're just in time for the matinee.
Yeah, looking back at tomorrow through the movies of yesteryear.
Ride and refuel. As Father chooses the route in advance on a push-button selector, electronics take over complete control.
Look, the future from the 50s.
A bit far out, don't you think?
I guess so, but we always thought the future would be kind of fun.
I suppose people have always dreamed of the future. We sure do.
The only difference is that today, with what we know and what we're learning to do, we really can bring our dreams to life. It takes a lot of work, but the truth is, if we can dream it, we can do it.
Tomorrow's horizons are here, today.
The cityscape, a living tribute to our richest resource, people. Here's a new kind of cityscape, the microprocessor, an entire computer on a tiny silicon chip. Crystals, inspired by nature, now engineered by man for an ever-growing role in microelectronics. The world of liquid space, oceans of minerals and food ready to fuel tomorrow's needs. The DNA chain, life's molecular blueprint. Decoding its secrets is leading us to dramatically improved health. The sun. Today we're learning ways to harness its limitless energy. What you've just seen are the building blocks for the future up ahead. And while it may look fantastic, remember, it's all possible.
That's right.
And we ought to know. We live there. Come on, take a look at 21st century living, on land, at sea, and even out in space. But let's start off at our place.
Right there is brilliant. She's talking to our daughter, the desert dweller. That little girl and her husband are in farming. Like music? My wife there is a good ear for music. That's our daughter she's talking to. She's not
Isn't it something? Send a city kid to college for 7 years and what happens? She becomes a farmer.
Oh, I think agricultural engineer is a little more like it.
Okay, but me, I'll take the city.
Yes, it's always exciting.
But hey, with today's transportation, we're just minutes away from our kids. Look at that, will you? A few years ago, this was all barren desert. No crops, no irrigation. Quite a transformation.
Stand by.
I need real shovels.
I believe it. Thanks for the warning. All harvesters, suspend irrigation programs. Harvester 6, Continue transport functions, then hold for further instructions.
You know, this really makes me proud.
And you wanted her to go to law school.
But do you suppose they ever miss the fun of the city?
Oh, I think they get their share right here.
Just came. Birthday gift. And don't give me that baloney.
Are you in love? Well, if you are, what do you
Very funny. Be serious now. Why would I be late?
You're always late.
Always late? I mean, you gotta be kidding. I'm a very punctual guy.
Oh, now who's kidding?
Shouldn't your granddaughter be studying instead of flirting with that beach boy?
He is not a beach boy. He's studying marine biology there on the floating city.
You better be.
I'll be there. I just want a laser rocket to put out of the sun.
Yeah, I know about those laser locks of yours.
I didn't even know anything about laser rockets.
You know, you might just check that.
Wrong road.
It's judgment. You must use good judgment. And what else must you do, Scott?
Swim safely, follow your diving rules,
And never horse around while diving. Never. Don't even see horse around. Okay, class, settle down. Now we're almost ready.
Floating cities. They're amazing. I mean, whole new industries have developed in them. And under them, mariculture, all sorts of marine mining, fuels, energy.
And fun. Remember fun?
Serious.
Well, so am I. Floating cities have opened up new ways for people to enjoy their lives, as well as their work.
There's always been something sort of mysterious about our oceans. We knew they were filled with valuable gifts for us.
Yeah, water and seaweed.
Very funny. But seawater has become an excellent source of energy, as well as being valuable for desert irrigation. And kelp.
Seaweed.
Kelp is a tremendous source of low-cost fuel. Oh, we found lots of good things under our oceans.
And don't forget space. We found lots of good things out there, too.
These space colonies are out of this world. Let's take a quick look around.
Now there's the new frontier.
Our son and his family wouldn't live anywhere else. Hey, maybe you and I ought to move up here.
Oh, what a wonderful idea.
Now there's my speed. Sports and exercise in zero gravity.
It looks like fun.
It is once you get the hang of it.
As soon as you manage to get your shoe.
What about the pony? That's pretty easy connections, too.
Only in fine.
Hey, Mom!
What is it, Mommy?
Look, Mom, I can fly. Why don't you try?
Oh, now that's really lovely.
Practical, too. Just think, materials from space for all kinds of industries back on Earth. And that's...
Uh-oh. We gotta run.
time for our grandson's party?
Uh-huh.
We'll catch up to you later.
Thank you. Don't you think you look like his dad, his granddad, and his uncle?
cousin.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday.
Final boarding call for Horizons 1. Attention please. Horizons 1 Earth Shuttle now available for boarding at Gate 22. Final boarding call for Horizons 1.
Attention Horizons passengers. You are invited to choose your own flight path back to the future port. Please look down at the lighted panels in front of you. Press one of the 3 ride choices: space, desert, or undersea. Everyone can choose. Majority rules. All passengers, make your selections now.
Horizon Center Colony, you are clear for departure.
Horizons Inner Colony, this is Omega Control. Hold for Omega Transport.
Horizons Hoverlift, you are clear for takeoff. Landing sequence complete.
Horizon Solo Sub, dive chamber 4 is clear for descent. Stand by for pressure stabilization.
Well, we're almost back from the future.
Oh, it went by so quickly.
Yes, but one of the nice things about traveling into the future is that the journey's just beginning.
That's right.
And I'll tell you something. If we can dream it, we really can do it. And that's the most exciting part.
From all of us, thanks for exploring Horizons. Now, please take small children by the hand and watch your step onto the moving belt. The belt and your vehicle are traveling at equal speed.